Good morning. I am just waiting on the lovely Katja and hoping that the yard people outside are not too noisy or interruptive. So I'm just going to take myself off video for a moment and give her a chance to arrive. Ah, here she is. Hi, Katja. Can you hear me?
So,
You can hear me?
yes.
Oh, good. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, we hear each other. Lovely. Hi,
Yeah.
Lani.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. Thank you.
Good. Good to see you.
Same. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was chuckling as I was getting logged in at all the questions that can come up, when you're getting ready to meet with someone and curiosities. And every time I tried to write anything down or get anything, it was like, no, no. It
No,
just
no.
felt like, yeah, it was like, we're just going to go with the flow and see what shows up. And um, there's still some trace kind of questions that I think will be helpful to guide the conversation. But for the most part, I'm just happy to be here with you and see where it takes us.
Lovely, lovely. Yes, I'm very happy that we get to get this to have this conversation. And if I don't understand something, because English is not my native language, so and the topic we're talking about might be a little more complicated than usual chit chat.
Totally get it.
Don't
Yeah.
mind me, I'll just ask again.
Yeah, I'll do the same. I joke a lot of times with clients and colleagues and stuff that words are not my first language. Like as an artist, colors and shapes and energy, and then trying to get that from my brain to other people just feels like an
Right, right.
obstacle
Getting it
course.
translated.
Yeah. So, yeah, for those who are going to see this replay and get to enjoy this conversation, I want to just give a chance for you to introduce yourself and share anything that you think's important for the work that you're doing currently, because I know, like me and most humans, you've had a journey and your work has evolved over the years, and I'm hoping we'll touch on that a little bit in the conversation. But if you'd like to share what you're up to now and, what is important to you about this conversation.
Well, let's see. Well, my name is Katja and I'm 56, almost 57 years old. And I used to work in the music industry as a PR manager for international recording artists. And I also did offer media coaching, interview training for domestic German artists.
Mm.
And because back in the 90s and late 90s, early 2000s, interviews could be rather triggering with their way of posing questions, could be very offensive too, just to get an emotional reaction for the narrative. And so it was quite good to be prepared for those kind of conversations. And turned out that the people, the artists I worked with kind of enjoyed my approach to these things, and they tended to call me later and ask me if I could give them some sort of advice or counseling without me being a therapist, but like a conversation with their personal issues. And so that's actually how my coaching business started, talking with sensitive artists
Mm.
about their issues. And later I wrote books about the topics I was navigating myself. And I dove into the phenomenon of manifestation and energies and energy shifting and all of that. And things in my private life have changed a lot, and things happened, and one led to another. And I kind of made a not a turn, but I all of a sudden was drawn to reading the Bible, which I had never read before. And so I thought maybe this is a good moment to just have a look at this book, and not only from at an historical approach to see it as an historical tale, but to see and read between the lines and what
Mm.
is prophecy and how other things connected. So I started actually studying it,
Mm.
not in university, but for myself, and kind of putting everything together and trying to apply what I read and to embody what I read and to get myself consumed with what's called Holy Spirit in that book.
Yeah, beautiful.
But yeah, well, this is the work I do now. I have conversations with people who would like to have a conversation with me, and they say, okay, I would like to really dive into this and allow you to see my blind spots and guide me in a way. And we work together for 3, 6, or 9 months, depending on what they would like to do. And we do that on the messenger, so they can always reread it,
Mm.
what I say. And I also write books. Yeah. So I'm in the process of writing my first novel.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun to hear your story, even though I knew it a little bit. I appreciate you recapping it for not only the people that get to enjoy this conversation, but also just for myself, because sometimes it's kind of like reading the Bible. I would assume that you read something, but then you read it again and you read it differently. So
Hmm.
likewise, in this conversation, I hear your story and I hear it a little bit differently today in that you worked with artists. Like I already knew that, but it didn't click until you used the word sensitive. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh, yes, okay, there's a lot of overlap here in the way that my journey has gone. And there's like places where it was so pure, the work was so pure, it was unfolding on its own and just
Hmm.
happening. And then there were other spots where my ego tried to get involved and like kind of try to like steer it. And so regardless, I just appreciate you recapping that. And you used the word manifestation. And I didn't hear you use the word command, but I know from your current work that is a term that you do use. And
Hmm.
I find the whole topic very fascinating. I was actually having a conversation yesterday with a colleague, artist friend, who I was like, it's so interesting to me that I knew nothing about manifestation until that term probably started popping up around, I don't know, 2019, something like that in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I was just manifesting like crazy, but I would have never used that word.
Hmm.
And it was very much from a place of what I call God consciousness or divine consciousness of just following the breadcrumbs, staying here, and not concerning myself too much with down the road because I will cross that path when I get there. And with that in mind, things just like blossomed and flowered. And I can imagine that's true for you too with the journey that you just shared. And then as soon as I started getting wrapped up in this world of manifestation where you're like trying to kind of learn It, I did do well in that field for a little while as well. And then it started feeling very off to me because it like took me out of the present living it and into the head analyzing it.
Absolutely.
And so I just love that, you know, you found your way back, not maybe not back, but you found your way to the Bible because
Yeah.
I do understand. It's so interesting that this keeps coming up around my world lately where other people have done similar things. And it seems to be a real comfort for many people. I mean, it's
Yes.
comfort and confronting at the same time. And I cannot speak to that because I'm not currently involved in reading the Bible, but I do appreciate many things that I've read from you and that you've shared and that you guide people towards with this as the kind of foundation.
Yes. Well, it's not in a religious way,
Yeah.
because I think that religion or religious concepts are can be very misleading, and they
Mm,
can be very they can be comforting for people, yes, because you are in a community then. But I think it is very important to be able to stand solid without community and without rules, or regulations or routines, and all these things, and also with the different religious concepts that we have in the world,
mhm,
which are clashing in a way. I always talk about the 3D reality as the matrix. And this 3D reality that we are navigating and that we are living in or perceiving is a place of duality and gray patterns, and you know and the religious theological approach to Christianity is, for me, always a little off. It is very competitive
yeah.
with other religious um, beliefs and approaches and
Mm,
concepts. So when I talk about that man, Jesus Christ, and his consciousness and the consciousness of the God and the consciousness in itself as being it, that is not theological or religious, but it is very practical to use or to embody in everyday life.
mm,
And also, see, when I think you asked me, I don't know when you asked me, but you said there is this difference between manifestation and
mm,
commanding.
mhm, mhm,
So, see, manifestation is always for yourself.
mm,
People who want to manifest something, they have a
mhm,
goal, they have a vision, they want that to happen. And they don't care about how, but they care about the outcome. And
mhm,
with the commanding, which is actually praying, the true prayer of surrender and giving yourself, your human self, as a sacrifice, let's say, not
mhm.
like stabbing and whatever, but
Sure.
um, denying your human self as something important, um, makes the command, actually.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
in that moment, you, how can I explain that? Oh, yeah. S- Imagine a room and there is a light bulb, and you
mhm,
are the light bulb, and something takes takes you and switches on the light, and all of a sudden you're glowing and you can't help it, and
mhm,
you are illuminating that room, but you don't actually do anything. You are just being that bulb and
mhm,
lighting or illuminating that room, and by illuminating it, all the things in that room show up. You don't have to look around. It's different with manifestation. That manifestation gives you a flashlight in that dark room, and you can turn on that flashlight, and you have to look, you know, very concentrate in a very concentrated way. I have to look in those little corners and see what's there and search for what
Mm-hmm.
we're looking for. And manifestation is always about yourself, what you want. And the prayer, the commanding, is surrendering the human desire
Mm-hmm.
and allowing what's coming up. And it's never a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that tracks very well with my own experience and also witnessing clients and colleagues and other people because it is, I think the ego can get greed has a heavy connotation to it, but in a sense it is greed, even if it's a little bit of greed or a lot of greed, it's still
Absolutely.
greed.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
from my experience, I witnessed what looked like a sacrifice and felt like a sacrifice many parts along the journey. And I would say like the last 20 years where um, it's like you're giving up what you think you want.
Hmm.
And then something so much better comes, but it wasn't necessarily aligned with, say, the conditioned self. In
Hmm.
a very practical example, it was like I fell to my knees at one point in my life and just like wanted to be used in some way for my creativity and empathy. And I just knew where I was at was not quite it. And
Hmm.
so in that prayer, I ended up having to let go of like my house and my kind of worldly possessions in a sense to go on a bit of an adventure. And
Hmm.
that was so much more rewarding. It also
Yeah.
did open up a lot of, from the human lens, like unresolved distortions. And so I'm glad to bring this forward in the conversation as well, because I think what happens is, um, or I would be interested to hear your take on when someone, say, goes from their conditioned self of like, this is what I think I want, and so I'm going to work hard to get it, versus, okay, I surrender to God's plan and I'm going to get out of the way. And
Hmm.
then things start really kind of flowing and you get nudges, let's say, to I'll speak for my own life of like starting a business or leaving your job or something like that, where you just feel a trust and a knowing that there's like blind faith to do that. And then
Exactly.
the doors open because of that blind faith. And I have felt like almost like entrepreneurship uh, requires a lot of sacrifice of the human and the patterns and the conditioning. And I want to check in with you and how you work with that, because I think that too can be a layer of conditioning that kind of says, like, I don't know how it would sound, but something like business is hard, or, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm interested on your perspective on that, because I don't want that to be true, nor do I think it has to be. But if that's the patterns that are rising to the surface, then I think, in some way, need to allow that.
Yeah, well, business is business. And whether or not it is hard or easy or flowing, it doesn't matter. Business is business, and it's a concept that
Mhm.
is a concept within our 3D matrix.
Yes.
And so if you call something business, you will always have to kind of do something for it to work.
Mm.
And you have to be brave, you make decisions, all of that. And so when I guide people, I always say behind the mirror, because in front of the mirror is this 3D matrix, and you look at something and you feel reflected by it. Or in classical coaching, everything reflects you or is a reflection of what's inside of you. And behind the mirror, everything is without any difference. It is absolutely indifferent. So the term business would not apply here
Mm.
anymore,
Hmm.
because as long as it's a business, you need income.
Mm.
Behind the mirror, the term income does not apply anymore, and
Mhm.
everything just happens the moment um, you need to use it, let's say.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
whatever shows up, you can bring back into that matrix and just, play with it. And this is the thing. Same with money manifestation. Money is also a concept from the Matrix, but behind that mirror, it is as not different from a tree, from a picture, from a person. It's all the same thing. Alpha
Yeah,
and omega, wine and water,
right.
solid ground and ocean.
And the
Death.
way I think of that is it's like these are all neutral objects or energy, depending on how you want to look at it. And it's then like the matrix that you're talking about, perceives and puts more value on like $100 bill than a bottle of water.
Yeah, well, everything that you perceive with your senses is part of that matrix. And behind the mirror of truth, maybe, there is no perception or a valid perception anymore. That does not mean that you are just bypassing what's happening,
Mhm.
but you are less affected by it. And
Mhm.
you see through the patterns, you see through the codes,
Mhm.
and you can use the codes to create something different in that 3D world without doing, but with being and
Mhm.
knowing and seeing.
Mhm.
And this is not a method to apply, or it doesn't have a structure to it. And this is why I am so happy that I read the Bible, because it tells exactly how that works. This is, see, when we have a look at the term obedience or obeying God, that's by obeying God, you command already. And
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
one example is, let's take Moses. He is leading his folks out of Egypt, and he is facing the sea, and he he doesn't know what to do, so he surrenders, and he gives himself and says, okay, I can't do it. But in that moment, he he gets the idea to take the staff and just put it in the sand. That's the moment he obeys. But that wasn't a ritual for something.
Right, right.
So he just did that. And that's when he commanded sort of the waves to part, the sea to part, so he could go through it. Or when another example is when Jesus was healing the blind. Jesus is the embodiment of the consciousness in Christ, or that the purest consciousness in form and color. And when he saw this person, this blind person, he not decided, he got the command, the idea to take his saliva and mix it with the dirt and then rub it onto the eyes. That was not a ritual. That was not a healing method. That was just
Sure.
he obeyed.
Yeah.
And by doing that, he commanded that blind person to see.
Mhm.
So when I teach the commanding, I first teach the listening
Mhm.
and to perceive the um, the command from God and
Mm.
to obey. And the command is never, hey, set up a business or set up a funnel or do this marketing. It's always a little thing that is already there. It can be, okay, get off your bed and hop, or go and take a shower, or lift up your cell phone and put it back down. So this is the command that you get, and then you obey. And by obeying, you command yourself.
Yeah, I love the distinction, and thank you for illustration because I mean, it definitely lands, and it does lead to a question that I had semi-posed before we hopped on around um, kind of the psychology, of the human. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I think of psychology, I think of the mind. It's like we're working with the mind. And yes, psychology has kind of started to include the body and somatics and all of that. But at the end of the day, that's still working with the 3D human
Absolutely,
form.
because it's
And
individual.
yeah, yeah. And oh, and I'm just aware of the moments where the human resists or does not obey, like how often that can be happening
Mm-hmm.
and keeping us in the matrix, keeping us in the unnecessary loops.
Yes.
Mm.
See, you're not being punished or anything if you don't obey. You're just suffering the consequences, which means that you get to not see. See, my client, she asked me recently, so I want to command something for someone, but that someone is not really a believer in stuff like that. Can I still do it? I said, yeah, sure. And she said, and is this thing or that situation that she wants, is that going to show up? I said, yes, but she won't be able to see it. And that's her consequence. So it
Okay.
doesn't mean, that it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're being punished or that things don't work or function the way you want it to. You just don't see it.
And there's just so much wisdom in what you shared because um the ego, of course, wants to take credit. And it's so comical to me because even now I'm remembering when I got to visit your Easter group
Hmm.
and kind of get a taste of your work.
Hmm.
And I played, and it started a little bit before I had joined your group with an intention that I had for my partner. And then sometime after the group, it came to fruition. And I watched the ego want so very badly to like celebrate that I had set the intention.
I did that.
Yeah. And my very loving and patient man was like, "Yes, honey, okay." Like he didn't crucify me for trying to take credit for his experience. But it's like, I just have to laugh and be patient. Yeah, it's like a proud kid, that wants to take credit.
Yes. And see, this is the thing that, I mean, Jesus said, we must be like children. And when we are adults, we have so many experiences and memories and so much wisdom, or at least knowledge, and we learn so much. And all of that kind of forms our perception and our opinion. And that is just a natural way of thinking or a natural way of being as a human in the 3D world and in the matrix. However, when we become children again, we don't know much.
Yeah.
You plan something and God is laughing about it, something
Oh,
like
of
that.
course. Yeah. Yes.
And this is basically it.
Yeah. Yes.
And this is basically it. And it's never about setting a goal or knowing exactly what you want, because this is what you need to do in manifestation. And when you
Yeah.
are fascinated by manifestation tools and methods, you will always have to do something for it. And there is no promise behind it. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a legal disclaimer in all the
Yeah.
manifestation programs.
Yeah, and I quite transparently struggled so much, again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, to find words for what you're describing, because while I had experiences of it, when it came to try and share that in words, I
Mhm.
was I was really struggling with language. I didn't even know what to call it. And I just found myself wrestling because I did not have goals in the many things that I kind of manifested and created in life. They weren't. They were literally me being terrified. My human was terrified of all the little commands I would get.
Mm-hmm.
And because it felt like God was delivering more, oftentimes more than I thought my human personality was able to handle. Like just more
Yes, it can
gifts,
be
more responsibility.
overwhelming.
Say that again.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. And also, see, as I said, with manifestation, you're not interested in manifestation if it is not about yourself. You
Right.
know, I have never met anybody who loves manifestation and is um into that,
Hmm.
learning methods and tools and ways and routines, who is not doing that for the only
Themselves.
goal for himself out
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
desire.
Yeah.
And this is just that's a one-way street, and it's also a cul-de-sac. It ends
Uh-huh.
eventually.
Uh-huh. It does. Yeah. And even if it was a detour, because I can, in my own experience, I can just feel the difference,
Mm-hmm.
of when it like it was in a sense pure and everything was kind of taking care of itself and I was just the one being directed and not trying to control it too much. And
Yeah.
then I can see so clearly where it was like a detour and all of a
Yeah.
sudden somebody else, me, the personality was
Yeah.
trying to drive the wheel
Mm-hmm.
for myself. And that's when things started to kind of unravel and shift and need a pivot as well. And so it's a really, yeah, it's just a refreshing conversation to have for anyone, I think, who is catching where they're wrapped up in this manifestation paradigm because
Uh,
it
yeah.
is it's at the end of the day, it's actually quite exhausting to try to control everything.
And also, it can be very frustrating. It can be really frustrating because you keep thinking in a way, what am I doing wrong? Why is this not working for me? I am doing all these routines. I am doing the rituals. I am doing all of that. I'm taking so much good care of myself.
Mhm.
And by doing that, we are putting ourselves on a pedestal that cannot be harmed. And at the same time, you know, going behind that mirror of reflection where you cannot see yourself anymore,
Mhm.
that is the easy, not easy because ego is there, but it's
Yeah.
the simplest thing because it all boils down to the
Mhm.
one moment, the one being, the one source. It's only just the one. And there's nothing to add, nothing to adjust or whatever. And the ego that is described as the snake or the devil in the Bible, that
Yeah.
is that sneaky thing that manipulates the
Mhm.
human self
Mhm.
and whispers stuff
Yeah, or yells.
or yells.
Stuff.
Yes, or deflects or gaslights or, brings up hope and shows a new tool to play with and all of that. And that the ego is that one thing that makes life hell and makes it complicated and
Mhm.
worrisome. And behind that mirror, everything is just boiling down to one thing only. And things are you're just being taken care of and in a really, really pleasant way.
So I think you would agree then that any kind of like ups and downs are the ego kind of,
Yes,
instead of allowing you to be in that more neutral state of what I call radical acceptance. Like this
yes,
moment is perfect. It doesn't
yes.
need anything more. It doesn't need anything taken away. And everything from here will continue to kind of blossom or bloom or die, etc.
Or just show up, the ups and downs that we perceive as such
Hmm.
in front of that mirror. is in fact just a perception and a an interpretation by the brain, and
Hmm.
the brain interprets what our senses perceive and
Hmm.
what we have learned, and what I perceive as a blessing can be a catastrophe for someone else, and vice
Absolutely.
versa.
Yeah.
So behind the mirror, it's more of a neutral observation. And this state of being can come across as pretty boring at first and very unsettling because nothing happens anymore. And
Hmm.
this is exactly what the ego feels like. See, I always say that the ego is a covert narcissist, because covert narcissists or people with that personality style tend to be extremely bored and
Hmm.
feel empty when there's no drama or nothing, no big feelings
Yeah.
for them to grab.
Yeah.
And that's why they need to stir drama to feel themselves. This is the ego. The ego wants to feel enthusiasm and drama and sadness, and wants to feel it all. And of course, if that does not happen anymore, the ego says, hey, there's something wrong.
Mm.
And we need to do something about this now. But
So how
eventually,
do you work with clients on that when they're kind of addicted to that drama or that emotional spiral, and without like trying to get into the mind and, analyze distortions and change distortions, because that feels like a little bit of a never-ending journey if you're like working with every distortion.
yeah, well, eventually the questioning and analyzing stops
Mhm.
because it keeps repeating itself. But
Oh.
of course, when I work with my clients, we first look at what's bothering them and what's coming up, and we find out that there is some psychological issue there, and maybe a neurodivergence, or there's a trauma, or there is a traumatic experience happening at the very moment. And see, at first it's very cognitive, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to understand what's happening. What are my patterns? Why am I people pleasing?
Hmm.
Why am I so scared of adversity? All that. And this is really just a cognitive thing, but they all come to a point where they get really tired of wanting to know, or
Uh-huh.
they can answer their own questions, or can see just right through the bullshit. And I would never work with a client in a way to say, "Hey, listen, I'm reading about your problem," and I would say, "Hey, it doesn't exist because I am behind the mirror and you're not. Tough luck."
Yeah.
So um
Yeah,
I
because
would
that's actually quite invalidating. I have had mentors like that where they're just like, it's an
yeah.
illusion. Well, that doesn't really help you if you're stuck in the
Oh,
illusion.
that's just your ego. That's just the ego. You're
Yeah.
listening to the ego.
Yeah.
So this is not helping because first you need to understand what's happening in that 3D matrix. And when you do, um, you can go from there, because then you understand how your brain works, your mind works, and how your mind tricks you. And you know exactly how the snake comes around and wants to pull you back in. And that's when you start, or when you begin to resist that temptation
Hmm.
of the snake, of the ego. And when you resist, you become freer and freer, and everything starts to make sense. And the light in that room is dimmed at first, is turned on more and more on, and it's brighter and brighter, and the room illuminates, and there is everything.
Hmm. Hmm.
No longer need to fiddle around with that flashlight.
Yeah, I liked that analogy that you had of fiddling with the flashlight, because it is, I've referred to it as shadow hunting, where
Mm-hmm.
you're just constantly on. And so that may have been useful early on, like what you described in understanding your pattern and its temptation,
Mm-hmm.
how it will, but eventually, like staying in that now you're just stuck and like going in a circle,
Yes.
like looping and looping. And and so in that way, I have found my clients and myself to be actually quite resistant to looking for what's going on after a while. But even that can be a little bit of an ego trick if
Hmm.
there's still something that feels unsettled. Now it's just avoidance in that way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I think when it goes into analyzing too much, then it becomes very complicated again. And
Hmm.
then when we remember what and who we are in truth, and that nothing is of any difference. And see, when I use the word indifference, it comes across as not being bothered or not being or not caring,
Hmm.
not having compassion for anything. That's not it. It's
Right.
just that you understand that nothing is of difference because only our brain creates that difference and the perception and the preference and always wants to go for the nice stuff.
Mm.
I
Sorry,
think I lost track now. I think I I
my
think I
dog came
something
bursting
that has
in and
nothing to do with what you said.
no,
Sorry.
you did actually, you did, because I was talking about shadow hunting and
Oh,
how
okay. Okay. I thought I
there's
was
like this,
reflecting about
there's
wanting to do so.
yeah, there's like this slippery spot. At least that's the way I see it, is the
Yeah.
ego. It's like this slippery little spot where it can start like where you're in shadow hunting, always looking for a problem to solve. And
Hmm.
then over here, it's another ego pattern, but it's like it refuses to go down looking for any more problems. And it's just
Hmm.
like, um, no, I'm done with that. I
Yeah.
refuse to look at anything else. I'm just going to be whatever happens, happens. And but if it's still an ego, then that's actually just an avoidance, in my
Yes.
opinion.
Yes, that's true. And also when we go shadow hunting, we are so consumed by the idea that there is such thing as a problem
Hmm.
to be solved, and that we constantly have the ability to solve a problem, when in truth it is the source of being, God, who is the problem solver, or the one who puts us in a new situation that is less problematic for us.
Hmm.
So there is no need for us to do anything. And also when we are working with a concept of being God's tool or being um, mm, praying to
Hmm.
God,
Hmm.
are also in making a difference and being in the separation of this is that and that is this.
You mean when you're praying to God instead of praying
Mhm.
as God? Hmm.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And Moses put his staff in the sand as God
Yes.
embodied.
Hmm.
And I think he probably didn't know he was.
Yeah, yeah, that's the crazy part. This is what I think,
Yes.
I mean, from a psychology perspective, it's called unconscious competence.
Yes.
And
Yes,
the minute
exactly.
I tried to find my own competence, I
Yes.
became incompetent.
Yes, exactly.
What is a
Yeah.
mind fuck right there?
Yeah. It is totally backwards. That's exact, but you say exactly that. I think Moses embodied something without knowing that he did.
Yes.
Jesus embodied it knowing that he
Uh-huh.
did.
Uh-huh.
And
That's really beautiful.
he
Yeah.
actively used that and showed his disciples, and he therefore had his buddies around him and his scholars, and
Mm-hmm.
taught them how to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what he called in his name, to
Mm-hmm.
do it in his name. He didn't say, whenever you do that, say it, you do it in my name, but
Right.
just become me in the
Right.
moment you do it. And I show you how. And oh gosh, that must have been 3 very frustrating years for Jesus.
Well, I just love that we landed on that so much because I've said it so many times in so many different ways, but ego also has a way of making us forget. I like to call it selective amnesia, but it's like the fish doesn't always know that he's in water, when he's
Yes.
in that unconscious competence. He's just swimming because that's what fish do.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're in, I guess, connection to that divine consciousness, then we're just moving as in obedience, right? We're just
Yes. Yes,
being in
exactly.
obedience. And
Exactly.
then as soon as the ego gets a hold and thinks whatever it
Yeah.
thinks,
And
it can
for that,
really.
we need to understand the role and the purpose of the ego and the methods of the ego. That's the first cognitive thing that I'm talking about with my clients. And
Which is
then
individual, right? Like I think we
yeah,
can
that's
agree with
individual. That's
that. Yeah.
absolutely personal. And
Which
that
is
is
why we can't go out teaching frameworks and concepts and because it's
yes.
all so individuated.
Yes, yeah, that's why I work one-on-one only. And with the exception for that one group that I did, I think that was the April group. I normally don't do groups for exactly that reason. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really great conversation. I was just trying to scan if there was anything else because I know we're coming up on the hour, but I really feel you touched on everything. The only piece, I guess, that feels a little like we could peak there would be with the body, because I hear you saying you start with the cognitive and the understanding your own patterns, but you don't want to stay there because that can turn into over analysis. And
Yes,
so, for
exactly.
people who actually, and this would include myself, and many of the clients I've worked with, they actually have an aversion or had past tense an
Mhm.
aversion to working with their own body because of
Mhm.
past traumas. It created that became like a scary place. I know I have spent many years learning to be in more connection to my own body. So I was very interested to hear your take on that.
Well, I was thinking when I read the Bible and when I thought about this special consciousness embodied by Jesus and incompetently by Moses.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, so whenever we have a worrisome thought or an angry, no, actually, no, more a worrisome or a regretful thought, or fearful, the body reacts to it with a muscle, with a specific muscle tension. That's individual too.
Mm-hmm.
So when my mind goes somewhere that's unpleasant, my body reacts to it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I am in a place where my mind goes in an unpleasant state of being, that's the sign for me that I am making a difference between good and bad in that moment, and my body reacts to it. So what I do then, I remind myself, no, wait a minute, this thing that I'm fearing does not exist. It's
Mm-hmm.
only existing in my mind. It's not here. And my body is going to show now that there is absolute no difference of anything. So I take my body back behind that mirror of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say my solar plexus is getting a little tense, or my tummy tightens up, or my jaw. I just really remind myself that in the moment I can give myself to that situation,
Mm-hmm.
become Isaac,
Mm-hmm.
or no, become Abraham, who is about to sacrifice his son,
Mm-hmm.
Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
So I become Abraham in that moment, remembering that everything is the one. And I'm at the same time, Isaac, offering myself, knowing that there is that little ram in the thorns waiting to be
Mm-hmm.
actually sacrificed.
Mm-hmm.
Know what I mean? So this is how I use that illusion of a 3D body, and I use it for the sacrifice and for remembering what is actually truth. And I find that very interesting that the little ram or in some translations, it's a lamb, a male lamb that is caught in those thorns and that is being sacrificed. It's
Mm.
like a prophecy towards Jesus, who was the lamb with a thorn
Oh,
crown,
yeah, I do see.
who is being who sacrifices himself.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
found
it's
that
like,
analogy quite striking.
yeah, yeah, that innocence and also the wise to me together. That's
Mhm.
what stands out to me.
Yeah,
Um, because and also it kind of connects to the conscious and unconscious competence piece, like the
yeah,
um, competence of a child in their innocent state is very can be very free, but it's not
yeah.
particularly conscious of that competence. And yeah, without going too far down that journey, I think what I hear you saying is also the body piece will be very individual. So whatever helps someone to relax into the truth, it may look different for different people. And yet still
Absolutely.
it doesn't need
Absolutely.
to have a million rituals either.
Absolutely not. No, my one client just said that she has difficulties lying down, relaxing, and not knowing for how long. And once her stomach relaxes, her jaw clenches again. Once her jaw clenches, she feels that her shoulders go back up. And so she has a hard time relaxing
Yeah.
her body into that. So she asked me, so if I go grocery shopping and I remember um what I am in truth, and then just let my shoulders sink away from my ears, would that do the trick, maybe? And
Mm,
I said, I think it does. I think it does. I'm not sure you have to try it yourself.
sure.
I th- I would say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I had this conversation with a colleague recently because she is devoted to her lie downs. Like if she needs to relax in truth, she is like on the ground, on her back. That works
Yeah.
for her. And I'm like, girl, I got to dance. Like my body needs to move some energy and then I can lay down.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
I
It's
just try to
very,
go
very
straight to a
difficult.
lie down, it's like there's just too much buzzing in my body.
Yes. And some people like me, when I lie down and try to be really calm. So also many would say, okay, you have to try to get your mind really calm and calm down the monkeys in your head. People like me with certain neurodivergent
Yeah,
specifications,
same. Yeah.
brain is not going to play along and it's
Yeah.
going to make you really anxious and really nervous and frustrated that it's not working. So just let the monkeys play their thing and focus completely on that body part that is tense and just let go, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Well, I love this conversation so much. I'm looking forward to
So,
sharing it and I will send you the link. And thank you so much for your time and
oh, Alani, thank you
your,
so much for
yeah,
inviting me.
and for
Thank you so
being
much.
here. Yeah, I appreciate your generosity. All right,
Yeah.
we will talk soon. Have a beautiful weekend.
You too, Lani. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye.